Okay, so before I start this review, I'd just like to thank Sony because I was allowed access to the very first UK screening of Spider-Man No Way Home. It was a very exciting screening and we got a good reaction. On to the review. It's basically really difficult to talk about this film without spoiling it, so this is a spoiler review. Obviously, it's a very good film. It's hard to hate a film where all of these faces turn up. Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield showing up, and the villains from their films coming as well. It's all really cool. And Daredevil showed up as well, which was what pleased me the most. It's very entertaining seeing all of these characters from all of these universes come together in one film. It can get a bit crowded at points, obviously, but it's great. It is a cinematic achievement. It is a moment in cinematic history. What I found the most interesting out of these multiverses meeting up is more actually the Tobey Maguire and the Andrew Garfield universes coming together. And the best scenes I felt were a lot of the times when Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were talking to each other, or just the moments where they would interact with their own universes. Those were some of the best scenes. I liked all of the MCU universe stuff as well. I felt that Tom Holland and Zendaya's acting really improved in this film. Definitely Zendaya. Zendaya I thought was a bit weak in the previous two films, but I think she's picked up some stuff from being on Dune with Denis Villeneuve and has made some improvements to her acting style. Tom Holland really does knock it out of the park with this one. His emotions and range are fantastic, especially in that last scene where he accepts that he has to let MJ and Ned move on from him, and that was a very powerful scene that I felt, and a really dark ending. It's an interesting place to start for this new trilogy that's coming. I'm really excited because now we've got a Spider-Man that is actually working by himself, because the problem with this Spider-Man, as we all know, has been he's been so reliant on Tony Stark and his technology and his wealth, and now he can become the Spider-Man we all know. At the end of this trilogy, I feel like he'll be in a better position to be a mentor for Miles Morales when he's eventually introduced. The action sequences are obviously really good. The bridge scene that's the trailer really went on about was really good. The Statue of Liberty scene was really good. Phenomenal achievement in music. I expect nothing less from Michael Giacchino, but the soundtrack was fantastic, and bringing in the Tobey Maguire themes was fantastic. Andrew Garfield, I never remembered any of the songs he had in his films, but I assume they were there as well. It was a very emotional film, as I say, from the ending. The scene I found most emotional was the scene where Andrew Garfield saves MJ. Not just when he saves her, but the reaction afterwards. And Andrew Garfield's acting in that moment where Zendaya asks him if he's okay is fantastic. Yeah, he was great in Tick, Tick, Boom, but just that moment makes me think, no, this is what he should win his Oscar for. I watched that scene again recently. It made me cry again. It's that kind of scene where it's that powerful. But you know all of that. The internet is raving about this film, obviously. It's already the 8th best film in the world according to IMDb, better than Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War, just underneath The Dark Knight. So I'm going to tell you what I thought wasn't very good about this film. I did have a lot of issues with it. I don't think it's a 5-star film that everyone else seems to think it is. Lizard looked terrible. I know that's not much of a big problem, but Lizard did look really bad. Whenever his mouth moved, he looked like a South Park character. It was ridiculous. And I know he doesn't look any better in The Amazing Spider-Man, but that's no excuse. You can't just go, he looked bad in Amazing Spider-Man, so we'll just carry that on in this film. But no, this is your opportunity to improve it. They did it with Electro, so why didn't they do that with the Lizard? Kind of one of my main issues is how the film is written, and it feels like it is written by fans for the fans, which is a good thing. But it feels like the wrong kind of fans wrote it. So usually when something is written by the fans for the fans, it's by professional screenwriters that have a passion for the characters. But I felt that this was written by people who write fan fiction on the internet, and a lot of the scenes felt like kids in their bedroom playing with action figures and putting them together, and a lot of the conversations felt very much like they were written by a fan. A lot of the conversations were kind of just explaining the events of the other films in a context that doesn't really make much sense. It felt very unnatural the ways a lot of the villains were talking to each other. Dr. Octopus and Electro, when they spoke, I felt like it doesn't feel very right. A lot of the dialogue I felt just wooden and bad and just very fan servicey. I don't consider fan service a dirty word, but it did feel a lot like fan service over story and over character. Some of the worst examples of this, when Willem Dafoe says, "I'm something of a scientist myself," obviously a reference to the meme, but why would he say, does he go around saying that all the time? Because he says it in a way that's like he knows that these people know that he says that, but they don't know he says that. It felt like a fourth wall break, something you'd see in a Deadpool film rather than a serious Spider-Man film. Also, a lot of the dialogue, especially in the more comedic scenes, felt very improvised, and where I thought this was the most egregiously demonstrated was in the scene where Tobey Maguire tells Andrew Garfield that he's amazing, and that whole scene felt very much like the director says, oh, talk about the movies you've been in and just act like you're talking like you're Spider-Man. That scene in particular just felt very wooden and very fake. A slight other point was just it was annoying when Green Goblin's mask was destroyed, because that is the complete opposite of what I've been saying about fan service. Why do they get rid of his mask? I get that he's trying to run away from his Green Goblin persona, but the scenes where he's fighting as Green Goblin aren't as cool because he doesn't have that iconic mask on. My main problem is I felt that the plot hinged on Peter Parker, Tom Holland's Peter Parker, being an absolute idiot. The multiverse issue is sold an hour into the film. He's rounded up all of the multiversal villains. They're all ready to go, and Doctor Strange says, right, we're getting rid of them. They're probably going to die, but that is their fate. Every other Spider-Man accepted that. The writers, I feel, realised this. They realised they'd written themselves into a corner because the film had basically finished an hour in. And they were like, well, we need to introduce Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire somehow. So they just had Peter Parker turn against Doctor Strange and say, no, I don't want these people to die. They have this cool fight. It was a cool fight, but that all felt very not real. Felt quite forced that this was happening. Because of something his aunt told him, he decided, I'm not going to let these villains die. And the annoying thing about that is that yes, he's trying to be nice and he's trying to save everyone, but he's being idiotic because he's risking the safety of the entire universe over the lives of these villains who he knows have killed people. I feel like they could have introduced the conflict in a more intelligent way, like maybe Green Goblin turned sooner and he got all of the villains and convinced them all to team up. Then Doctor Strange is desperately trying to see, well, what do we do? They tried to get like other villains that we'd never seen before as well, like maybe they brought Rhino in and Craven in or something like that. From that moment on, I was just thinking, well, all of these problems could have been avoided if Peter hadn't been an idiot. He kind of thinks that way as well, because he's like, I should have killed all of these people when Aunt May dies. That's part of the reason why I didn't find the Aunt May death quite as emotional as everyone else did, because I was thinking, well, it's your fault she's dead, and it's her own fault as well because she was going on about it, but you decided to let the person go that has killed her, so it's your own fault. And also, I don't have as much connection to this Aunt May because she's less important to Tom Holland's Peter Parker, I feel, because Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, their Aunt Mays are quite integral to their plot, especially Tobey Maguire's. I never felt that Aunt May was ever really that important in the MCU. That's especially hurt by the fact that, you know, Uncle Ben has never been introduced, or shown at least. Another fun little tidbit though is that Venom was introduced and then quickly removed from the MCU, which I quite enjoyed. It's good to see that Kevin Feige had the same opinion we all did of Let There Be Carnage. That version of Venom is terrible and would not have fit in the MCU anyway. It'll be much more interesting to see what they do with the Venom symbiote now in the MCU. But that's basically all my points about Spider-Man No Way Home. I did enjoy it. It was basically fan service the movie, and I don't think it was as intelligently written as it could have been. It's not as good as Avengers Endgame, and it's nowhere near as good as Into the Spider-Verse either, which is what this is a response to. This is the MCU going, right, we need to do Spider-Verse. But Spider-Verse did so much more in the 2 hours than this film did in 20 years worth of films. It is hard to hate a film where all of these Spider-Mans come together and all of this multiversal stuff comes. You know, I loved it when Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire showed up as much as everyone else did. It was amazing. And I now hope that Christian Bale joins Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck in the Flash film, where they do basically what this film is doing with Spider-Man, but with Batman. But yeah, so Spider-Man No Way Home gets a Deight score of 8. Happy dating, you loners.